Hey everyone, climb on board with me, Lewis, the Mitten Pilot. So let's go fly and experience everything the Mitten has to offer. Hey everybody, welcome to the first video in my new series where we're going to cover the various private pilot lessons that a new private pilot student would take. Today's first lesson is going to be about taxi and takeoff. So we'll just dive right in with me pulling the plane out of the hangar. So I grab the tow bar and attach it to the strut by a couple of bolts that stick out, and look left and right and make sure that we're clear and give it a good tug. My plane weighs about 1,000 pounds or so with no gas in it. Once you put gas in, say 15 gallons, it's another 90 pounds or so. And you pull it out from the hangar, making sure that you're not hitting any obstructions. That's what the look left and look right was all about. And then pull it out into position where you can get it started up and go for a flight. So I'm going to reach down here and disconnect the tow bar from that strut and go put it away, and then climb in the airplane and go get it started. So when you start the airplane, you're going to prime it a couple of times with a primer plunger, actually is what it is. You push it in and it shoves a little bit of fuel into the carburetor to help it get started. And then you're going to yell out clear prop.
Clear prop!
And once you've yelled out clear prop, letting everyone know that you're about to start it, you'll turn the key. We'll talk more about that in a second to get it started. As you can see here, it didn't start the very first time. I pulled the plunger out for the primer, pushed it in again once I started it, and it fired right up. So we're going to get taxiing. Taxiing you control with your hand, or your feet, not your hands. With your feet like this, not your hands driving like this. It's like this. And what you'll see first is as I start taxiing, I'm going to push hard with both feet, and there's the dip from the cow. I'm pretty aggressive braking to make sure that everything's working as it should. So when you taxi, the technique is to put a little bit of power in, kind of goose it, and then pull the power back so that you don't end up going too fast. You want to go at about a brisk walk, and so that you have time to stop if something runs out in front of you or something else bad happens. You always want to be careful. So going too fast while taxiing is bad. As we come up on this turn, I'm going to look left for traffic, and then look right, and then I'm going to stomp hard on that, push hard on that right hand rudder pedal to get that right turn going and get onto the taxiway. Alright, so we're taxiing towards runway 22. That is a runway that aligns with the compass at 220 degrees. If you think of 180 as due south, 220 would be 40 degrees to the right of that. So that's sort of a southwest direction. So we're going to go up to the end of the runway. We'll stop and we'll do a run up, and then we'll get going. As we get close to the end of the taxiway, the first thing that we will talk about is this double bar yellow line up here. It's two sets of lines, actually. There's a right there, you can see it, the two solid lines closer to the airplane, and then two broken lines with sort of gaps in them on the other side. Now on this side where the solid lines are, you have to stop. Before you go past that point, you have to get clearance from the controlling authority. Now if you were at a towered airport, which I am not, you would actually call air traffic control and get clearance from them before you were able to go and take off. Now here, it's sort of a more informal thing. You're going to call everybody else that's in the traffic pattern and say, hey, I'm about to take off. I'm taking the runway. I'm going to go off to the west once I take off, and let everybody know. If you don't do that, it's quite dangerous. Folks won't know that you're there. So that's why you stop short of those hold short lines. Alright, so now I'm going to do run up. What does run up mean? Run up means I'm going to check all the different systems and make sure that they're working. So I set my brakes because I'm going to power up my engines here in a minute. I'm going to check my flight controls, my yoke and my rudder, to make sure that they're moving the correct directions and they don't get bogged down on anything. I'm going to make sure that my mixture is set to full rich. Let's talk about mixture for a minute. In an airplane, the fuel and air is mixed in the carburetor and sent to the engine for combustion, but as you climb into the air, the amount of air up at higher levels is less dense than down here on the ground. So that means you actually need less fuel to get the same ratio of fuel-air mixture. So as you climb, you actually back the mixture out, they call it leaning, so that the mixture ratio stays the same. What's really cool about that is as you go up in altitude and you lean the mixture, you're using less fuel, so the plane becomes more fuel efficient at higher altitudes. That's why you see lots of airplanes trying to fly a little bit higher so that they can save some gas. Okay, so we've set the mixture to full because that's what we want to test for takeoff, so that we have our max power available on takeoff. And then we're going to up our RPMs to 1700. That is a good number for making sure that you can test all the things that the engine would do without having to put it at full power and blow people away and wear air on your brakes and that sort of thing. So we're going to check the magnetos. We'll pause again and talk about the magnetos for a second. There are 2 of them in the airplane. Stay tuned for another video where I talk about those some more, but just very briefly, they provide electrical power to the spark plugs, which of course ignite the fuel-air mixture in the engine and provide the combustion that turns it and turns the propeller, and we're on our way. So if those magnetos don't work, you're going to have a world of problems. So you test them by turning the ignition key off of start or run to the left. If you do it 1 click to the left, it's the left one, and then 2 clicks to the left, it's the right one. They're swapped for some reason. I can't remember it right now, but go look it up. Bonus points to the person that puts that in the comments. There's actually a good reason for those to be swapped like that. It's hard to remember, but once you do it, it's all good. And of course, it's on the checklist. So you test those, then you test the suction gauge, which is evaluating your vacuum system. Now, the vacuum system is used for a couple of instruments on your panel to spin gyros that are in those instruments that provide information to the pilot. If that vacuum system isn't working, those instruments won't work, and you're going to have more problems. Time to go back to the mechanic and have him figure out why that's not working. Then you're going to check some engine instruments. Specifically, what we're looking for is the oil pressure and oil temperature. The pressure will come up right away as soon as you start the engine. There's actually a check in there. We've kind of glossed over the start, but there's a check in there to make sure the oil pressure comes up right away. And then you check the engine temperature. Now, of course, the engine temperature, especially on a day like today, will start off pretty cold, maybe in the 40s, and take a while to warm up and eventually get up into the 80s, 90s, 100s. So I'm checking to make sure that those are in the green arcs that the indicators say they should be in. Then I'm checking the voltmeter, which also is sort of checking the alternator. I also have another indicator, a light. If the alternator has failed, that light will come on. If the battery isn't providing power, I won't see the right voltage on my engine monitor. So I'm checking those things as well. Those run all the systems inside the airplane. And then I'm going to test carb heat. And we'll stop and talk about carb heat again for a second. So in the carburetor, the fuel and air is mixed, and then it is shoved into the engine for combustion, obviously. Now, when that fuel-air mixture is running past the different internal components in the carburetor, that increased airspeed lowers the temperature of the air that's in there. And of course, air has some humidity in it, which means there's some moisture in there. And if it gets cold enough, that air or moisture will freeze and block fuel from going into the engine. No good. There's a gizmo called carburetor heat. So you turn that on, and that provides heat back to the carburetor so that ice can melt and not block up the carburetor. So it's really important to test that, especially when you're at low power settings, like you would be on landing. So when you're landing and you pull the power, that is a good time for that carburetor to ice up. So in my airplane, as soon as you pull the power back, you turn on carb heat. very important that that's working. So once you've pulled the carb heat, you also then pull the power back to idle settings, again, as if you were landing, and make sure that the engine is running smoothly and will operate all the way to the ground so you can make a safe landing. Okay, once that's all done, I'll reset the power back to normal takeoff levels, and we'll get ready for takeoff. So here we go on our roll. I'm going to make an announcement. Brighton traffic, November 8637 Golf, taking runway 22, departing to the west, Brighton traffic. Now I say Brighton traffic at the beginning and the end because frequencies among these small airports are shared, and radio transmissions can carry quite a distance, and you want to make sure that people hear where you're talking about so that they don't get confused, so that they understand where you are when you're making your common traffic advisory CTAF calls. So I've made my call. I'm taking the runway. I'm going to look left and right. Can't see that in the camera, but there it is. I'm checking the approach end off to the right there, and to the left as right before I make my turn, the departure end, and then I'm going to line up on the runway and check to make sure that that number down there at the end of those arrows says 22, because that's the one I said I was going to take. I don't want to accidentally be going the wrong way. Okay, so before I continue with the takeoff roll, let's cover how this works. As I start rolling, I'm going to increase power, and then I'm going to call all this stuff out. I'm going to say full power, indicating, and I'm going to look at my tachometer to make sure that I have full power. It has happened to me in the past. You can go see another video of me in the Cherokee. I set full power, I checked indicating, it was not indicating, which meant I could not take off, and I had to abort my takeoff. I pulled the power, hit the brakes, and pulled off to the side. After a couple attempts that didn't work, long story short, it turned out that the carburetor had failed, and we were not getting full power, and they had to fix it before it could be flown again. So that is the first thing you check. Then as you're rolling, you want to make sure that your airspeed indicator is working. Out on the outside of the airplane, there's a thing called a pitot tube, which provides air pressure into the airspeed indicator to make sure, or to show you what airspeed you're traveling at. If that gets blocked, maybe by ice or snow or a bug crawling in there or something, you won't see your airspeed change. If that's happened, you have to abort the landing. So that's why I call those out and I check the airspeed. Then I take a quick look at my engine instruments again, oil pressure, oil temperature, to make sure that those haven't changed. I'm adjusting for my wind. Maybe say in this case the wind is coming from the left. I'm going to turn into the wind a little bit because, as you can see down at the end of the runway, it's kind of narrow there in between those trees, and I want to make sure that I follow the runway into the air and stay on that line until I'm well clear of those trees. When I hit 50 knots, I'm going to pull back on the yoke just a little bit, about that much. We'll lift the wheel up just about off the ground, and I'll continue down the runway at that angle. That is rotation speed. At that speed, this airplane will fly. So once I rotate, a few seconds after that, it happens quite quickly, the airplane will start flying, and I'll actually give it another good bit of a yank, just about that much, to pull it off of the runway and get a positive climb, and then I'll ease it just a hair back into a position that gets me 63 knots on my climb out. That is a great speed for me to climb out at. It gives me good forward momentum, good height climb, and keeps the airplane at a angle that the airflow can flow around the engine and keep it nice and cool. So let's watch that in action. So full power, indicating, airspeed alive, gauges are still green, that's my engine checks. I'm looking for 50, I'm probably calling out 40, 45, 50, somewhere there. Rotate and then pull there and climb out at 63. So you maintain that center line and keep your eyes outside the window and watch for that you're not moving left or right. It's pretty narrow here at Brighton, and takes a little bit of practice and some skill. Clear those trees. You can see a little bit of rocking there as I transition between the swirling winds where that were down in and below the trees, and the sort of faster air that was up above the trees. And now that I'm up a little bit higher, you can see it's a little bit more steady, just some normal rocking and rolling, and we're off to the races. All right, everyone, that is pulling the plane out of the hangar, taxiing up to the runway, and a takeoff. As always, if you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear from folks. Just drop a line in the comments down below the video and let me know what you're thinking. Love to chat with folks about how this whole thing works. And then get ready for lesson 2. Alright, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, click that like button and make sure that you subscribe so that you can follow along with all of my Mitten Pilot adventures. Thanks for watching. See ya!